Yeah, totally.
I must have consent, you know.
You do have to click the button.
Well, welcome, Keats and Lux. I'm so happy to have you here on Rendering Unconscious.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank
I'm
you.
so excited to be here.
As I was
Absolute
just
honor.
good, as I was just saying before we started recording, I wanted to invite you, well, you're friends, but of all the podcasts I've been on, I felt like yours were so great and you all really get it and ask such good, thoughtful questions and have your own amazing creative practices that I'm realizing more and more is like this entire like network and world of its own. And so I want other people to hear more about it and get tuned in.
I love it. Yeah, I really appreciate it. That means a lot, especially coming from you, such as yourself. Always been a big fan. Had such a great honor having you on a couple of times, and yeah, I love all the work you're doing. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, and I'm so excited to get into everything.
Where should we start?
Yeah, that's a good question. Uh,
Absolutely, definitely.
yeah. I don't know. I guess yeah. Luxa, do you want to kick it off with maybe a couple of projects that you're working on?
Sure. Well, I guess the most obvious thing to talk about would probably be the Green Mushroom Project, since that's kind of sprouted off a variety of other little things. But this is something that me and some others started back in 2020 with the objectives of creating a network of green, or maybe you could say like Venus aspected in some ways of thinking about it, magic for practitioners to draw on. This is really good for like healing, creative, restorative, connective magic. In the ancient times, Venus was often looked at as for somebody like for diplomacy and things like that. So, with all of the unchillness that was happening in the world at that time, we thought that it could be cool to magically cultivate something that was a sort of counter current to that. So we wanted to do this, and within that, like kind of build a little community and hang out, and empower ourselves within it by encouraging people to like get into magic, to use these kinds of powerful techniques like hyper sigils and other things like that to become more agentic within their lives and be able to make the changes that they want to make in their lives and maybe in the world or whatever. And also within this kind of space to strengthen our position against hate groups, by having that solidarity with each other. So it's been a really cool experiment, a really cool experience, and I've met a lot of amazing people that, yeah, I just feel so honored to be a part of all of it. So yeah, that's probably the most obvious thing. And but yeah, Keats has a really cool kind of parallel crew going on with the We the Hollowed folks over there too. So maybe that would be a good kind of uh echo to the Mushroom Project.
Yeah, emphasis on echo for sure and resonance. Yeah, because We the Hollowed started as an in-person kind of variety show where I started interviewing people on stage, and we had musicians and live art, and we had a residency in Portland, and it became this very, very much just like I think I saw in the greater construct of like occult communities, the kind of elitism and gatekeeping, and not a lot of actual practical, pragmatic, artistic driven, you know, magic. So we started that way, and then of course, the pandemic, and I had moved from Portland, so then it kind of leapt online and it became this like international one. So all of a sudden we have folks that are participating that are in Scotland and Australia, and it kind of got a bit too big and broad for a while because of the pandemic and learning, streaming and this new paradigm of like kind of living digitally in a way. So that was a crazy kind of smorgasbord of different of writing and music and audio sigils and video sigils and a lot of like um a lot of construction via the net, via digital kind of means. So we've had both those paradigms, which, are other times kind of thought more of a dichotomy or something contrasting, having in person and then having online stuff. So it was cool to, weather both. And now we've kind of honed it back down into a publishing house, where we put out oracles and books. And I just released a book called Divergent Magic, which is very much about infusing the process more than the result within magic. And yeah, it's all art based. And that's kind of how Luxa and I crossed paths. We were both, doing our anarchic things separately, but together in a way.
Wonderful. And what's this event that we have coming up on March 18th?
Yeah, so the Honquinox, it'll be the third annual, and it's something we do every year around the spring equinox. And it's just a kind of stream fest. It's a way for all of our disparate, country people and all sorts of different areas of, I don't know why I'm flashing so much, but and all different areas of the world to kind of come together and showcase what they've done for the year. It's very much in the spirit of those early We the Hollowed variety shows. Where I'll host it, but there'll be, people submit videos specifically for it, or they'll submit music. I'm actually going to be doing live audiomancy, which I've been doing the past year for my work with Haunt Manual. And it's these live audiomancy rituals that I figured out how to stream. So that was a whole like tundra of digital issues, But yeah, so it'll be very interactive and fun. And yeah, it's our third one, which I'm surprised that it's, I've kept to anything that long. Specifically something that's so perennial, So yeah, it'll be really fun. I'm really excited for you and Carl to be a part of it. You'll have so much to share too with the books that you guys have done recently. So it's just a great way to have everybody come together and do a big art barf,
I love it. And you both
Yeah.
do work with music and do audio sigils. Should we talk about that? Because I love the power of like magic in music.
Yeah, that's my background. That's something I've been doing for a decade or so. Under the name Dakota Slim, it's I started making very thematic hyper sigils and infusing very, intentional metaphysical means to construct songs and to construct, audio. And it's grown from, these very thematic albums to these big rituals that I'm now live streaming, and I'm going to have be, paired with a book of my Haunt Manual workings of the past year, which is coming out. And yeah, it's kind of my bread and butter. You and Carl were a part of the first, or actually the second big We the Hollowed audio sigil a few years ago. And, that was made with supreme intention of tethering everyone's submissions and kind of constructing, this web together. And yeah, it's just, that's definitely my background. That's my way in.
I would say that I'm kind of the opposite. My background is very much not in music at all. So I would contextualize the things that I make as being more music adjacent magical products than maybe music per se, because the intent is really more magical than artistic. But I do, the artistic process is a huge part of it. But yeah, for me, a lot of what I do, it has to do with like exploring just different like aspects of the self through a sort of like recursive ritual process that I record and mix with music and things like that. And we recently had an experiment where I wrote up a sort of ritual that looks very much like the one that I designed for myself when I first started to experiment with this, and offered it to people to sort of conduct work along similar lines. And together we put together a 23-minute track with about 15 ritualists. I think it was about 36 rituals that they've all conducted together, and me as well. And yeah, it was a very interesting experience. And yeah, we think that we're probably going to make some more of them. We've been talking, and we think that maybe the next ones we make will be more planetary, like playing with some of the planetary energies and stuff. So getting into a more collaborative version of this has been really cool. Keats and I collaborated on a sort of fun digital mixtape project recently where we had folks send us in magical, esoteric, occulty tracks, and we put it out there on Bandcamp as a little collection, so folks should definitely check that out.
Yeah, and that one was unlike the audio sigil that we did that you were on, Vanessa. The mixtape was very much meant to be kind of, in the style of like the 80s kind of cassette tape mixtape.
Mhm.
Just, a rollicking kind of randomized finding the retrocausal like magics within the tethers without having to be super intentful. Um, as
It's a
I
real
am
grab
wont to do.
bag.
Yeah.
And this is called
And
Flip Around and Find Out Part 2, the Green Mushroom Project and We the Hollow digital mixtape. So I should have mentioned the name of these projects. And the collaborative audio sigil is called Audiophilia.
Yeah, but we so what I did was because we wanted to really, charge the kind of randomization process within the mixtape. And so I was kind of instructed with figuring out the track listing, which to remove myself from it or like trying to place things by sound or song as you usually do. What I did was I converted every song title utilizing the ALW cipher, and then found matching kind of words with those cipher calculations, and then constructed a poem. And so the poem line by line is actually songs, and that's how I, you know, got
I love
the
that, Keats. I was just gonna roll
yeah,
dice. I'm so glad that you did it
yeah,
that way.
yeah. It's important to me, like with every facet, it's got to be, there's just so much opportunity to really do some beautiful intentional works within these small processes that you otherwise find kind of trivial. And I don't think any process is trivial, especially when it comes to art and creating art. So it was fun to, okay, how do I take myself out of it but still make sure it's randomized and not be judgmental, I guess that's the
Yeah.
correct word.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that process and product thing is huge for me too, kind of getting back to why I don't necessarily like to say that my stuff is maybe music, because it really is more about the process of making it than
Yeah.
what it becomes in the end. Although I do often enjoy the thing that it becomes, but the actual work is making it for sure.
Yeah. And that's paramount for me. And that was a background to Divergent Magic, which was, I came up with this schema. It was like this outline that I utilized not only to instruct myself on like health habits, but also transposing it to all of the myriad of different artistic rituals that I have for creating albums or writing. And I found out it was basically this outline that you can transpose, to anything. And thought, what a great way to basically create a foundational text for We the Hallowed and people that are interested in sharing these recipes that make up their lore, the rituals that make up themselves and their artistic process. So yeah, process punks for sure.
Right on.
Absolutely. And I loved how Lux and the podcast of yours that I was on recently, how you like interspersed the different songs or audio sigils into the podcast where they fit, like the one that you had made where our bibliomancy had reflected some ritual that he had done a couple years ago. And then you put that in there. It was so nice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love to use the podcast as a sort of vehicle for magical experimentation. It's been really cool for that. And so, yeah, if people listen to it, they will hear some of my audio sigils and whatnot in there. And some of my guests have made some really amazing stuff as well, including Dr. Sinclair. So, yeah, very cool.
Yeah, and I'm gonna definitely link to everything in the show notes. And actually, I always put a song at the end of the episode. Is there anything that you two have made together?
Not
I don't think
directly
so,
like
but
that.
we
Yeah.
should. We should
Yeah,
soon. That would be rad.
absolutely. I've
Yeah,
got
because I
it
want to
coming
put
out of
one of
my
your songs
ears.
on the end.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
depending
I'll
on how
send it.
fast you make something.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm working on so with Haunt Manual was I posited this idea of like working with hauntology in this sort of like magical system of the self and eras of the self and like synapses of projects that were lost and forgotten.
Mm.
And that's where all of these audio rituals that I've been doing live, where I'm playing every instrumentation is specific to the ritual. Whether it was like a temporal one where the first one had much to do with like a communion with myself in 2017 and like what made that year so magical for me. So, all very intrinsic kind of instrumentation from 2017. And then the second one was like an aspect of self that I thought I lost during this dark time. And that was me as a kid, like working late into the night with like creative abandon with like circuit bent instruments and mutant noises. And so like that was me working with circuit bent instruments again. And I say all this just to say that like the whole purpose of doing these rituals and of themselves were, there was this soothing that needed to happen, this like communion with the self and like the past and everything. And so it really broadened my horizons of what can be done as far as a like materium, like a communion with a materium and snapshots of selves and eras of selves, and I thought it would be cool to kind of work after this book is done, to work with people like Luxa or you or whomever, in kind of communing these eras of self, and
I'm seeing
transposing that somehow.
yeah, that would be amazing. I'm seeing so many parallels in what you're saying with some of the work that I've done there. Mine is, I think that I'm approaching it from a very somatic standpoint in terms of like trying to break down some traumas and other things that are, built up within the body and everything like that. So a lot of my process is very somatic, but it's definitely this sort of idea of retrieving or revisiting the certain aspects of the self. I think a lot about the Eleusinian mysteries and this idea of the Persephone within that like one can go and, find or whatever. And the my Hecatian practice is very much this is something that comes up a lot and it's very near and dear to me. So I love what you're saying there.
Yeah, and I mean that was, that's part and parcel is like these unearthed traumas and working through things that I, built up pretty strict barriers about, but learning to commune with them, learning to like dance with them instead of shut them out or try to
Mhm.
fix them,
Or try to
So
destroy them or whatever
yeah,
other thing that, yeah, it's, yes.
yeah. So like that's been my big practice as of late. And of course, with Haunt Manual, it was like I called it a living grimoire because what I did was I would put out a chapter on Substack. Then I would do the working that would be live streamed, and then I would put it out as a podcast or work with it in video. So it was all like it was breathing. It was like existing as I was creating it, you know.
Mm.
And so now the big trick is, and kind of the saunter into self even more is collecting all those writings and kind of refining them and putting them in book form. And I was working on it this morning and I was like, I really need an editor. Like
Or you need to
I
cut it
am
out.
yeah, I just there's just so much there and there's so much that you want to lay bare, and there's so much like of the past and these things that you're unearthing that it that are so paramount yet seem so, I don't know, menial in some way. And it's been really hard to, with the format of I'm just going to art barf it into the world. Here it is. And then to go back and refine it and be like, I should expand on this a bit, or I should leave this out, that
Mhm.
comes a whole other realm of kind of constructing a hauntological experiment. You're creating a time capsule of now, and you're being able to refine it of who you are, maybe a prospect of self.
Yeah,
So
I think there's a really interesting thing that happens in this process too. I'm kind of going through something similar as well and trying to figure out, at first this writing was just for me, for my thoughts, to organize my thoughts, to catalog them or whatever, but going to share them, that's a different thing. And it sort of it opens it up into a conversation where all of
yeah,
a sudden it had just been a sort of like thing on its own. And it's sort of, it's giving me a lot of opportunities to like maybe look at other people's perspectives, like what is of this is going to be useful for everybody. What of this could possibly be maybe like sort of universal, and what of this is just definitely my own thing and won't help anybody and could be left out for sure, right? Like, and just kind of trying to like open up that conversation with the broader world and your mind has been an interesting process for me.
Yeah, it's like communing with the daemon of like a projected self. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or your
And like,
projected reader or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, you know, who would I be to include some of this, and like would I understand this if I didn't live it? And that in and of itself has been such like a hexorcism, kind of an ex hex and vex of like get your head out of your ass, kind of kind of working. So yeah.
No, it is an interesting process. I've actually done a similar process lately too. So this is what I'm saying. This is why I had you on. This is everything's like so resonant. But with
Yeah.
my book that just came out, Things Happen, it's basically like me writing down memories that I actually started writing down like in 2008. I went through a period where I wrote a lot of things down. It's because I moved out of Miami in 2007. So I guess like when you leave the place, then you can like start processing how fucked up it was.
Yeah, for
Basically,
sure.
because
For
you're like
real.
out of the war,
Yeah.
and you're like, whoa, what was that?
You're like you leave a cult and you're like, holy shit, that was real.
Yeah.
Or yes, dude, yes.
Yeah, so I wrote a bunch of memories down in 2008, and I even remember them like Googling it and stuff and being like, was this real? And like finding like newspaper articles about it and things like that. And then yeah, I started revisiting it again in 2020, and I wrote down more memories, but I also wrote down like dreams and things like that. And I also did like this kind of self-analysis because after one of my friends was killed by her partner that she was breaking up with, so ex-partner. And he
Sorry to
also
hear that.
killed him. Yeah, it was horrible. It was in
That's
2020,
fucking
and
horrible.
he also shot himself. So he shot her and shot himself. So we can't do anything because he's dead too. But when that happened, obviously like a huge shock. And I tried to find like a psychoanalyst or someone to talk to, like to process. But like I talked to a few people, and they just like my life is just so different than most like therapist lives that I was
Yeah.
like, none of these people have any idea what I'm talking about. Like, I can't talk to them. So I just started doing my own kind of self-analysis, where I
Hmm.
would just like record it into my phone and just like let things come out because I know how to do analysis. I've been analysis for like 10 years, over time. So I just did my own like Freud. And but then I took those recordings and I put it through Otter and like ottered them so that they were all printed out. And then I basically like printed out all these pages of like memories and dreams and my like meandering rambles and all this stuff. And then these old memories that I had written down like in 2008. And then I threw them all around the house, like just started throwing the pages around the apartment. And then I went around and picked them up like randomly and then reassembled them. And then I thought that I could like somehow edit it on the computer, but it was like, no, like now I have to like read it and like retype it out.
I love that.
So it
Oh,
became
Yeah, and
this
I
that's so
like
love,
cut up,
cool.
cut up, cut up thing that turned into this book.
but yeah, and all
Very
those like
cool.
somatic machinations that you had of like you actually having to physically go and retrieve them and
This is, yeah, it was
organize
a
them
whole
and put
quest,
together.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I mean when, I'm sure Luxa too, when we talk about, all these kind of intrinsic artistic processes, but metaphysically minded, it's like how important those small processes are, especially, and like within audiomancy, a big thing for me was I had to, there had to be a somatic resonance. I had to like hit something and have something come out. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't sit in front of a computer non-linear edit. I couldn't, you know what I mean? I even did a podcast recently that was all constructed with a 4-track, and like I had to be subservient to whatever was on tape. You can't go back and edit those magnetic, pulses and stuff. So yeah, I
That
love
sounds
that.
harrowing, Keats. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
well,
lie.
yeah, it's
I
great. And I
heavily
mean,
edit my show.
yeah,
So
well, you find that there's a bravery in it that I found, probably more bullheaded than brave, I guess, of just screw
I'm
it,
here
this is
for it.
what
I
it
love it.
is, you know. But I wanted to talk to you, Vanessa, about, so my third working in Haunt Manual was called the Prospector Working. And so the first one was about a time in my life. The second one was about an aspect of self. specter and aspecter. And then the third one I called the prospector. And it was my my work within like utilizing a spirit box, an ALW cipher, with the group Listening Post Alpha. I took those tools and I put them in a live audiomancy ritual. And so I kind of communed with the spirit box uh, through music, live, like improvisational music, and then went back and listened to the spirit box and decoded kind of the messages using the ALW cipher. And I found that, and this is probably more um, like more resolute that it's the subconscious in all of this, right? Than it is like ultra terrestrials or any of the other things that I've been experimenting and trying to commune with. But there was like this idea of communicating with like a super self or like a higher self, a self that was like displaced outside of time, that knew my jokes, like had a lot of humor and what I was reading that only I would get. And I don't know if like I said, that's probably more evidence that this is a very subconscious working, you
Yeah, that's
know?
the unconscious. The unconscious
Yeah.
is funny.
Yeah. Right. It's hilarious. Yeah. But I love that. And I love the idea that you could, through all these machinations and these tools and everything, you could commune with like a higher self that was free from the confines or boundaries of, oh, I wouldn't say that, or I shouldn't say that, or. So that was
Yeah,
the last big
exactly.
one that I
It's a,
did. And it was,
it's
yeah,
outside your neurosis.
right. Yeah. Which is a very, very big trench to climb out of.
And it's a place of honesty, right? Like outside of
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. And like
exactly.
maybe that is, the HGA or, all of these. I don't want to over scientism things, but I see a lot of correlation within all of that and this kind of aspect of self, this like super self that we're all trying to kind of parlay and tarry and and work with. So
Yeah, I think of it as like our ego or the self that we identify with as like the I, like who I
mhm.
am. It's like it's just a very small part of ourselves, right? And it's just like the neurotic part. And it's neurotic because it has to deal with like all the stuff coming from inside and all the stuff coming from outside. And it's this kind of like interface, right?
Gotta keep
And
shit on
so
the
Yeah.
tracks. Yeah.
yeah, it has this like neurotic structure that it's like devised for a reason over time, made habits and patterns and things to try to help you make things easier for yourself, but it often causes you to miss things or trip up on things. And I feel like
But
psychoanalysis and magical practices and creative practices all kind of help you like work with it, like break it down a little bit so you can be a little bit more fluid, but also just like understand how you work and like maybe some of those ways are necessary and I can work with them instead of like having to feel like I have to get around them or, you know.
yeah.
Yeah,
And like
absolutely.
yeah, I think it correlates too with memory, memory as a defense mechanism a lot of the time, and kind of painting a lore or a narrative that can put you to sleep at night, that you can live with
Yeah,
from
and
the past.
giving these things a place to play too.
Hmm.
If you have them and you can't get rid of them, well, how can you play with them in a way or dance with them, as you said, Keats, in a way that
Hmm.
is helpful or non-destructive or creative or cool or whatever it is. And yeah, it's definitely something that I like to do within the musical practices is like, let these things out a little bit. And I've played around with a little bit of like name magic, giving them some names and things like
Yep.
that. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's been cool. I know this is something that you're very into too.
Yeah, yeah, very much. Yeah, because I kind of always see it through a storyteller lens, and so it's always a very like, um, there's a narrative kind of like a parallel to it all, and I see these things as characters or like what
Hmm.
Pessoa called like heteronyms, you know,
Mm.
um, and which is funny, like linguistically, heteronym also, just meaning this
One name,
a
same
couple of
name.
words meaning the same thing, right? And like that's what these past selves are. That's what these kind of constructs of selves are. They're all like within that, you know, um, orb of self.
So interesting. Um, I think we should also talk about like what you both mentioned as like art being more about this process than like the end product, even though we also oftentimes enjoy the end product, because this to me is so different than like the way art is perceived in like the art world and like art schools and what like people are being taught that art is. And this whole idea, like the thing that drives me crazy is like, oh, an artist isn't like an artist until they're like recognized and like canonized. And I'm just like, what the fuck
Yeah.
is this
Yeah.
shit? Like, who
I'm
came up
not
with this
sure if
Bullshit.
fucking
I want to be
bullshit?
called an artist. Like
Yeah.
that's why I'm not like I make art, but I'm not sure if I'm an artist, and I'm not sure that like I'm not I have a complicated relationship with that name.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, my big thing, and that was the same with Divergent Magic and all of these other things, was, you don't need to worry yourself with the results if you're passionate about the process. Like
Yeah, and I
the
think that there's
results will be, equally intentional, but also like surprising and beautiful. But if you just care about the results, like, and you're wasting all of this time trying to achieve that, it just seems like a dog chasing its tail. It just seems kind of ridiculous to me. So
absolutely. And if one of the results is this recognition, then you're
yeah,
really putting a lot of faith in sort of outside authority, right? Like you're
yeah, we
giving a
got
lot of
bad
power
news for
to other
you.
people. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and this idea of like what I hear, I've heard like I've from people that are art students and things of like this, like everything has to be conceptual and you have to be like trying to say something or make some sort of political statement with your art. And
Mm.
it's just like that to me is just like all ego. Like they're wanting people to like go into their ego and be like, okay, what does your ego want to tell the other egos in the world? But to me, the whole thing is like learning about yourself through the process of creation. And then
Yeah.
maybe like when you look at it or reflect on the process, then you're like, oh, okay, I see what I was doing. It's more like you kind of understand what you were doing after the fact, which is also like
Mhm.
psychoanalysis and magic too,
Mhm.
oftentimes. Or like in magic, you think you have one intention, and then when you like realize like over time how your magic has like unfolded, it's like, oh wow, I've been doing this and this and this, but you're not really, it's again the ego and the unconscious. It's like our ego or our conscious mind is so small compared to like our whole selves that like
Mhm.
you don't want to give it all the power to like decide what your art is going to be or your magic's going to be. You have to kind of learn to work with your whole self even if you don't really understand all of yourself.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And
absolutely. Yeah.
that was kind of a stark realization I had, because I think prior to all the haunt manual stuff that I was doing, I did put too much stock and intention, like intrinsic intention, and what I meant by this and what and that's maddening. Like no one is going to kind of resolve your intention without you having to kind of, walk them through it. And I just feel like, and if it does happen, that's brilliant. But I think what this allowed me to do was, yeah, like what you were saying, this kind of like retro causal, when something is created and you look back on it and you're like, oh my God, yeah, it's so obvious what, I was doing, and it birthed this beautiful meaning to me. But like art has to be living in a way. And I don't mean that in like an absolutist term of living life or death. I mean, it has to be like, it needs to permeate, it needs to like change. I think that's probably the only absolute, is that there's change. And so the only art that speaks to me are the ones that I can revisit and have a whole new appreciation for, a whole new kind of deconstruction of. I even like the ones that I end up disliking, because I'm like, wow, I love this in the beginning, but this became something for me now that I'm seeing as not agreeable. And that's fascinating to me. I don't think that's bad art. I think that's, incredible that it can do that. It can, it can
Yeah, it can
move.
cause a reaction. Yeah, I agree,
Yeah.
Keats. And things are always an interaction, right? Like it's the art, the viewer, the space, all of it
Hmm.
comes together, and that's always going to be shifting and moving.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there is something interesting, and I agree with it. The idea of revisiting these things, and when there's a discomfort that a piece of art causes, I really like to sit with that and like what is going on here? Like, why do I hate this so much? Like
Yeah.
what is it
Yeah.
about this that is like getting me? And like really sort of trying to like sit in that discomfort and like yeah, get into like what's going on with all that. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, and I
Yeah, I
think
agree.
they just came back from Prague like the day before yesterday from Genesis's exhibition. And I think Jen's work is like a perfect example of these things because Carl had there was a like a ending party event where they showed the film Other Like Me, the Coombe Transmissions film,
Mm.
and then Carl and Nicola Belay both spoke, and another man who was a Czech man who had translated like William Burroughs and the Beats and things into the Czech language. Um, and so all three of them spoke about the film and Jen's life and things like that. But the thing that's so interesting is like even people that like the work and are into the work and are there still don't understand the magical aspects, which is so
Right.
interesting because like I had a friend when I was in New York who was in art school, and like Jen had a show in New York at the time, and I took him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I knew this artist, but I didn't know they were into the occult." And I'm just like, "What do you think that you're looking at?" Like, I'm like, "Oh, like, and this artist was even taught like in your class, but like that aspect was not." And so, like, what are you teaching? And it's like the perfect example of like the product, the end result, like these things that are on the wall are sigils. They're not
Mhm.
Yeah.
collages from like an art perspective. I mean, they are also, but they're sigils and they have like blood and hair and cum and things on them. And it says like mixed media with like bodily fluids like
Right. Right.
listed. And it's like, why do people think that it's like that? It's just like this person's like zany artistic creation that they just had to like, or they're psychotic or
Right.
something and had to cut themselves and throw their fluids on it. Like what
Yeah, they
like
look at it through just like an aesthetic paradigm where like
it's
that could
so
only,
weird.
yeah, I'll never get that either. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's hilarious
the
though
world's a
to
confusing
walk into a
place, so
gen.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna actually I recorded the whole conversation, and I'm gonna put it up at our Patreon so people can hear. But it's interesting because even people that are there to like watch the art, like Carl, of course, because the beginning of the conversation, like the moderator wasn't even going into magic, was just like talking about art or whatever and like performance art and stuff. And then Carl's, of course, like, well, and of course this is all like magical workings,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
hello. And like he had to keep mentioning it like 3 or 4 times before like other people started like catching on to it or like willing to let it in. It's really interesting
Yeah.
how like the art world or just the world in general is not willing to let it in. I think we talked about this too on your podcast, Keats, like with Billy
Yeah.
Corgan and Caitlin working
Hmm.
with him, is like this
Yep.
is a big like pop artist or whatever, but people like won't let in like his magical ideas or whatever. So it's like they're like, oh, that's people dabbling in the occult or whatever they always say. But like
Isn't
why
that
why
funny?
won't they let it
Yeah.
in?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've
Or it's like,
encountered
oh,
this with
that
my
was their occult
circles.
base.
And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
like
people
it's a
just have this,
phase.
yeah,
Hmm.
they just have like when you try to sort of like tell people about this stuff, they just sort of get a glazed look over their face, like I'm not gonna engage, like that's just too much for me or whatever. So yeah,
Yeah.
I saw
It's
some
bizarre.
pictures that you had posted of the show. It looked amazing. Very
Yeah, it
Yeah, it
cool.
did.
was. It was a really good retrospective, and it was kind of weird. I actually got really emotional, and I didn't expect that for some reason. But it was like obviously this is the first time I've been around like Jen's stuff since Jen died,
Mm,
Yeah.
and like a lot of
yeah.
things from their apartment were like in the show, so it was like weird to be like, oh, that was like last time
See
I was
that.
over there, like these things were on a coffee table because they were gonna like get exhibited, but they weren't framed yet. Now they're like there hanging, up, and it's just, yeah. And then like pictures behind the couch were like there. It was just weird to see, yeah, your friend's stuff
Yeah.
Sure.
like in a
Yeah.
Happy
museum.
belated birthday to Jen too.
Yeah, a happy
Yeah,
belated
absolutely.
Um,
birthday to you too,
And to
too.
you, Keats.
and to Luxa. Yeah. I think
February
actually
babies.
Luxa, I and Jen all share a Shem angel.
All
So
right.
Nice.
yeah,
Cheers.
there you go. In that block. Um, but
Very
yeah,
nice.
that I just find it funny. Yeah, the boxes. Yeah, it's always the write-off is that they were doing this, the intention was aesthetic, like they wanted to shock. It's like, no, that wasn't the intention. This is what they're living. This is what they're, literally bleeding onto, a work of art. And I do find that funny that like snootiness in the art world about it, or it's always just written off as a phase, or or something lowbrow, like, which I always find hilarious, that the occult is lowbrow to a lot of art critics, you know.
Mm.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah, I think it must be just because they don't understand it and they're just like so
yeah,
bent on like being like in the position of knowledge, you know. So if there's something they don't understand, they just like write it off or just ignore it as if it doesn't exist. But it's like
I'm sure
then
they view like spirituality as taboo in any sort,
Sure.
you know.
I think there's also like the forces of capitalism at play here too,
Mm,
where like art becomes more of like an investment than something to be appreciated just on its
yep.
own as well. So I've
Yeah.
heard a lot of artists complain about that, like people just buying their pieces to throw it in a storeroom to let it appreciate value and it never gets seen or, so yeah.
Yeah, that's dark.
yeah,
That's
I hate
that
it.
like hurt my heart listening to
I'm
that.
sorry, Keats.
I
Yeah,
was
but
like,
it's so true of how they have to
yeah.
like my mom's an artist and I remember when she was represented by this gallery, they wanted first of all she mostly paints like nude women and they were
Mhm.
like, well, not everyone wants like a naked woman in their house. So you have to paint other things like flowers and cats and things like this. That are like things that anybody could put in anywhere. And
Right.
then yeah, and it's like, well, why are you telling people what they should be making? And then also they want you to like paint things like repeatedly so that people can recognize your style and that's what makes you like this is basically becoming a brand. You have to be able to become a
Oh,
brand. And
that
that
Yeah.
is
sounds
just so
boring.
so killing also. Yeah.
I mean, it's
I
one
hate
thing
it.
if that's what you're into and that's like what
Yeah.
you do naturally, because some people sort of do, but like I had to kind of chase that. That seems so cynical.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
see
that's
on
what they tell
Instagram
artists.
when I rarely I'm one of those post it and leave people when it comes to social media.
Me too.
So very rarely I'll scroll up and I saw somebody, you know, a industry insider teaching you how to develop a brand, a visual brand or a visual style for your like music, to that like these are what the big record labels are looking for and needing. And I was just like, everything about this I hate, you know. Like if you need to work with X suits about developing a visual style, like you have no business
Do
like
something
doing this.
else. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't mean that sounds elitist, I know. I have my moments. Um,
No, but
but
it's
yeah,
just
that
not. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, but I mean, yeah, some people are doing it just to get, this recognition or whatever, money and stuff.
Yeah, we live
Um,
in a hashtag culture. It's like it's just titles now. Then they're so easy to get that they all become meaningless, you know. That's why I think the process thing is like so remarkable, and so like absolutely needed and necessary now. Especially with the advent of AI and like the eradication of certain processes that are deemed, minuscule or trivial, that really have a wealth of like beauty and intention in them, So I think a lot of, the work, whether it's Green Mushroom Project or We the Hollowed or Trap Art or, like really, yeah, just living within those beautiful processes upon processes of like somatic kind of working, like with your finding the different cut up memories and stuff. Like that's just so important now. It's just so needed.
and then you know what else I did when I was putting the book together? So then I've been sending spoken word recordings to this guy Pete Murphy in England, and then he's been making music out of them, and he's made something like
Oh
16
yeah.
albums or something in the past few
Yeah, I've
years.
listened to a couple. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really fun. So I made like a playlist just of me and Pete's albums, and then I would shuffle it, and then I would like work on my book. And then, of course, I had read parts of the book to send him like while I was working on this cut up thing. So I would be like, I had this folder of all these like memories that were cut and found and pasted around, and then I would like retype it, and then I would like hear myself saying things, and I would type those things into the book too. So it was
That's
like,
amazing.
yeah, it just became this like enormous feedback loop of me.
And it's also like a living game of telephone because you're not probably exactly transcribing what you're hearing, right? So it's like feeding through another filter of yourself
Yeah,
at the same
exactly. And then
time.
at the very
Yeah.
end, I did have to like when I read it through the last time, I did like do some editing which Burroughs did too, where I was like,
Mhm.
okay, I made like the people less people so that like I combined certain people so that there wouldn't be so many names. Cause then like people don't need to know that these are all different people. Like doesn't matter.
Oh, I love
Like
that.
let's
Yeah.
make it a little less confusing and there's not so many names. So like combine people down to make less characters. And then
Mhm.
I also like if I got to a page where I'm like, all of a sudden I talked about someone, but I hadn't really mentioned who they were or something, and it just seemed too disjointed, I'd like go find a paragraph about them later and like move it up to the front so that it like flowed a little
Right.
bit better.
I want to know, how do you like, yeah, because when constructing a book, especially if you're writing something like autobiographical, when you're combining people, is it like kind of by traits? Like how does that process work?
Yeah, it did. I combine different people in different ways. Some
Hmm.
people are like, some characters are like several different people or different aspects of people that I fit
Hmm.
together. Yeah, things like that.
Yeah, I love
So
that.
yeah, and I had to
Very
kind of
cool.
let go of who the actual people were and
Yeah.
like let them morph into the characters.
Then they
Though
have,
my friends
yeah.
from high school, like I have one friend she's a little bit Stevie, this character Stevie in the book. A lot bit Stevie is based on her, and she's reading it and she's like, okay, now I understand who so and so and so and so and so and so. And she's like, but who is so and so? She's like, I can't place this person. I thought it was so and so, but then I realized like so and so didn't drive. And I was like, well, that's because I combined this person, this person. She's like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
I get it. So there are living people that actually know these characters
But
That's
yeah, you
in
cool.
real
That's
life
really
created
and
like,
also
cool.
live this
yeah,
life.
yeah. And you created like egregores of combinations
Of
of
all of
aspects
us
of
as
people. Yeah,
teenagers.
I love
We
yeah.
that.
will
Yeah,
live
I was just
on.
thinking that.
That's really neat. I love that.
It's kind
But
of
yeah, that's like
fun.
part and parcel to the, the thing with, you know, this lore and this narrative that we're always spinning. And I think that's why like writing first and foremost has like always just been uh yeah, it's just been the best practice about process and ritualistic kind of thinking when it comes to process. It's like very translatable, everyone can do it. It's very and I love that. I love the egalitarian aspects of writing as an artistic process, you know.
Yeah, and it does keep people alive because like that is what spawned it. Though I actually started writing the book and had the idea for it, like right actually I sat down and typed the first page literally the same day that my friend was killed, but obviously I didn't know that she had been killed yet. So that's also eerie. But anyway, that's how life works, I guess.
Yeah.
So
But
sad.
that's why like I worked on it so much over the past 2 years was like to kind of keep her alive because she was like my main kind of like partner in crime on all these adventures from like, 1993 to like, yeah, like 2003 to 2004. So yeah, so a lot of these stories involved her. So now it's like she can live on and people can, yeah, read about her and yeah,
That's
maybe
lovely.
there'll be sequel books and we can go on other adventures. Because of course,
Right.
also through this process, I had like so many other memories come up, and then I was like, okay, I just need to stop. Like at some point, you just have to stop and let it go. Be like, okay, maybe I'll write down some more and do it again in the future.
Yeah. And then there's like the extremes of that, like Henry Darger, or somebody who like lived primarily in this imaginarium that he created, which I'm always fascinated by, when folks can do that. But yeah, there's yeah, just this effervescent need I have for grounding, and I think it might be like part of the neurodivergence or whatever, but like always checking in somatically with, you know, being appropriate, or like like am I still here? Like am I dreaming? And yeah, so like all the processes and kind of shaking it off after, creating an audio sigil or creating um, a writing or whatever has been just as important sometimes, of like, putting the forehead on the ground kind of a situation. So I see the other aspect too.
Yeah, and it is cathartic. Like I feel
Yeah.
much better now that the book is done and out there. Whereas for the
Yeah.
past 2 years, it was like it was a good way to process the grief and like work, do something active with it. And now I feel like okay, like younger me has a place. So she lives now in this book. I don't have to like carry her around so much,
Mm.
and like, Jessica has a place, like she's there, like everybody's like alive in this little world that's now in a book and it's not inside of me all the time. And I can like, yeah, I don't have to feel like I have to carry it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
That's
that's
like,
really beautiful. And yeah,
yeah.
that there's this place where these, people can hang out in this literary like landscape together.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's really cool.
Well, and especially as you were saying, like I think of it all the time. It's like this kind of ghost choir of like younger selves in the brain, like, hey, time to, dance with me. Hey, you should think about this. You have it in 2 years, you know what I mean? So it's like that kind of orchestration with, as you were saying, like, memories of self and younger selves and all
Mm.
of that. So yeah, I love that. It's giving sort of a like a memorandum to those different aspects and kind of like an offering, right? It's an offering. Yeah.
Mm.
Nice. Well, we're almost at the end of the hour. Do y'all have anything coming up that you want to make sure to promote, or anything else going on that you want to make sure to mention?
Yeah, I am about to release the new chapter of Haunt Manual at hauntmanual.com, and it basically just says, hey, Haunt Manual's changing. It'll be more sporadic and not as intent on the hauntomancy or the hauntology of the self magic I've been doing for the past year and a half with it, so I can compile it into a book. And yeah, pragmagick.com has all the links, one of which is for the Divergent Magic Grimoire. I just released the
Yay!
paperback. And actually, Luxa's, I think, is supposed to be delivered today, and Vanessa's
Yay!
is like right around the Honkonox, which is on the 18th, and that's at Pragmagick. Was it youtube.com/@Pragmagick for that?
Well,
But
I'm
yeah.
Nice.
really looking forward to checking out the Divergent Magic Grimoire. It looks really rad. And yeah, I guess people should check out the Lux Occult podcast if they want to hear more from me and hear some of those audio sigils that we were talking about earlier. I recently interviewed Aiden Wachter. It was a really good conversation. It's cool that he's back and everything, so that was a fun time. I'm really excited about starting to button up a experiment that the Green Mushroom Project has been working on called 23 Bibliomancy. So we're putting together a sort of scripture, a corpus of text, which is our sort of sacred scripture that we're going to be using to build rituals and conduct divinations and other things with. We've been playing with it. But on the 23rd day of the month, we meet up and we take the book that wants to participate, or we use the fifth book from the fifth shelf, or whatever people are into. And you take the 23rd line of the 23rd page and we enter it into a spreadsheet and then determine the order that these will appear in the text using a dice roll. So it's been a really, really fascinating experiment. We've just completed book 19, so we're kind of rounding the bend. And we figure that once it's complete, we will compile it into like a sort of like zine format and then find the 23rd line of the 23rd page of that and see what it will reveal. So all kinds of fun recursions happening there. And if people want to get involved, check out thegreenmushroomproject.com or let me know. You can find me at luxoccultpod@gmail.com or at luxoccultpod on Instagram.
Yeah. And
Excellent.
I'm forgot to mention Pragmagick with a K everywhere. I think Pragmagick_cast on some social media. But yeah. And wethehollowed.org. It's too many
Yes.
links.
I will link to
So many things.
everything in the show
Yeah.
notes so that people can easily find it, and on the renderingunconscious.org website.
Awesome. Yeah, it's an absolute honor to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vanessa. This has been fantastic and such an honor to be here with you and Keats. It's been so cool hearing about some of the parallels that have been happening in our work and everything. And yeah, just really exciting stuff. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Good.
Thank
And
you,
I'll see you
Luxa.
on the
Always a pleasure.
18th.
Yes, on the 18th. And Luxa, if you wanted to submit something for us to share, we would love to.
I'm hoping to be able to make it. I'm going to be out of
Mhm.
town the day before, so it's going to be a little tight, but I'll see if I can get something your way.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I am also out of town the day
Okay.
before.
All right. Well, maybe I
Yeah.
can swing it then. If you're doing that, then maybe I can too.
Oh
We'll
no,
see.
like but and if you couldn't, I totally get it. And we would love to, share whatever like music or whatever you have.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get you
But
something.
yeah,
All right.
Excellent. And we'll do it again soon.
yes, please.
I would love that. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
On to on.
On.